Informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Progress Report. My name is Ivan Khanna. Of course, I'm here with my lovely co-host, Miss Gleneva Hodge, and we have a very important and special guest in the house today. I know this gentleman as Vani. I let him introduce himself in his current role, but this is a guy that I have known throughout the years, would have moved through the ranks of government. Man, I know you from Valley School.
From Valley School, yeah. Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a long while.
I can just sit back because that means that you guys go way
back.
We did play music together.
Did everything. I just realized you go way back. But then from there you went off to school, came back home, had a very successful tenure at DITES, and now you're at the Public Utilities Commission.
Yeah.
At the helm of the Public Utilities Commission. So do we call you the commissioner or the director?
The director. Executive director.
The executive director of the Public Utilities Commission.
Yes.
Now, I am pretty sure that majority of our listening audience, one, do not know what the Public Utilities Commission is. Two, do not know what the Public Utilities Commission does.
Right.
Would you agree, Gleneva?
Yeah.
Because when you say public utilities, what are we talking about exactly?
So I would leave our guests answer that. Because, in my head, and again, remember, I read extensively.
Yes.
And so
she reads, so let me give you this joke. I don't know if you know, right? But she reads the executive council minutes.
Yes.
Verbatim. She can tell you what happened in the executive council.
It is so important. It is important to know what's going on.
I mean, I read them because I have to, but wow, okay. That's good.
So it's true that in some other avenues, and I wear several hats.
She wears several hats too. Yeah,
yes, I do know of the Public Utilities Commission. So.
All right. Okay, but before we get there, the man behind the role.
Yeah.
Tell me what you've been up to. Tell me about yourself, because this is a new role. How long are you in the role now? 6 months?
About that, yeah. I came in at the end of April. I took over for Mr. Ken Banks.
Right.
He was the executive director for some time. Did an awesome job. And it's an honor and a pleasure to take in the role after him, and he's been very helpful to me, and training me, get me up to speed with this role, and thank you very much for that, Mr. Banks. Okay. And the board of the PUC and team also that I work with. The PUC is very small. It's only 3 of us. So me, the executive director, my executive secretary, and I have my professional, which we call the regulator, professional regulator.
Okay.
So it's just the 3 of us. Right. So I didn't think I introduced myself though.
No, that's fine. I introduced you, but you can
great. So a lot of people know me. They know Vani. They don't know my government name.
No, we don't want to go to it.
Just kidding. Right. So I'm Damien Harrigan. Of Island Harbour. Yeah. And as you rightfully said, I worked in the service for 22 years.
Yes.
Right. So I've been here for a while. Moved up the ranks. Throughout the service in the Department of Information Technology. Also in that role, I did some regulatory work on behalf of the Ministry of Infrastructure as the telecommunications officer. So I did that for 8 years, right? So a natural progression for me was to move towards the full regulation, which would be the PUC.
Okay.
Right? So the PUC, Public Utilities Commission, we are legislated to regulate all of the utilities in Angola by legislation. So when we talk about public utilities, we're talking namely energy, water, and telecommunications. Right? The PUC was created sometime in the early 2000s because we were looking at liberalizing. We were liberalizing the telecommunications market, right? So at the time, we had just one service provider in Angola, which was Cable and Wireless. We wanted to grow the market, so we needed someone to regulate that market. And what the PUC did at that time was to just ensure that the monopoly plays fairly, to allow someone else to enter the market and be able to compete. Right. And eventually the aim is that the monopoly will die down and the field will become level. Right. And then we had Weblinks came in at the time, and we had Digicel came in. The market has more or less leveled off, and that's how it goes. So
let me ask you a question, just to put a point here.
Go ahead.
Is there any room for another carrier? And let me put my disclaimer out there. Let's flow out Digicel say, because I have both, that I am trying to take away their business. I'm just saying, everybody has their concerns, and competition breeds a better environment for the consumer. So if a T-Mobile decide they want to enter Anguilla, is that something legislative that can happen?
It can happen, right? You never really want to get stuck with two. It's always better to have three or more, because you have a monopoly, which is you have one, but you can also have a duopoly, where both can become comfortable with each other and say, okay, let's work together and let's set our prices together to match. Hey, we more or less balance. So now let's work together. So you call that duopoly. We don't want that as well. But the issue that we have in Angola is just the market is so small. The scale is so small. So I don't know if it'd be viable for a third carrier, but it definitely is possible. It is. The legislation doesn't speak to the number of carriers that we can have. Right? It doesn't. Again, like I said, when we started, we had three where Blinks was in. Whatever happened in that situation, so forth, they're no longer operating. But the market is we can have more than two.
And you're versed in IT, very technical. So right now these global SIMs from Google and stuff, and taken away even from the satellite phones and thing. Like I have a couple friends that literally have a global SIM from Google, and they paying a flat thing and they got service wherever. Do you think that if something like that comes on stream, it might call for some regulation there?
Yes. Anybody that wants to sell a service in Angola has to be licensed. Right? So you're saying that people that have these SIMs, they didn't buy them in Angola.
No.
Right. If anyone that's selling a service in Angola has to be licensed, they have to be regulated. Right? We have to ensure that the market remains viable for the carriers that are here, right? So we have to be careful of these global players because they have the economies of scale.
Exactly.
Our carriers don't. So anything like that, we have to tread lightly in that regard, because we don't want to disadvantage what we have here. We all know what happens when you have that monopoly. Prices go up, and it's not good for the consumer. And that's what we're here for. We're here to ensure that the consumer benefits in the long run, right?
And what I'm hearing from you too, you actually protect business interests as well.
We have to. Again, in order for the consumer to be happy, we need that competition, right? And I know we're just seeing the launch of these internet packages from both Digicel and Flow, and I mean, that's amazing. Never thought we'd have gotten there so quickly. But that can only happen.
Wait, you don't see the launch of the packages?
No, I have not seen. So you're gonna have to reel me in a little bit on this. You see, I pay.
So you didn't see the whole fiber to the home thing?
Fiber to the home.
You didn't get stuck in traffic behind Tango, them pulling all these lines, through the valley down Little Harbour.
I think I already have fiber, but I don't know.
You think you already have fiber? Boy, when you live on the hill.
I think so. Don't quote me. I just need to know that my internet and my phone is working, and whatever else happens behind it.
So you don't matter about the speed. Like me, a man like me, I'm happy.
Yeah, because you're doing extra stuff. I just literally just need to get on the internet.
Well, Anguilla, we can brag as being our lowest internet package right now is 100 megs. Right, that's the lowest. That's very, very good, especially in this region. It's very, very good. I mean, we are from the US and Europe where they do gigabit and so forth. But 100 megs, that's something we can be proud of.
But here's the benefit for that. And I know a lot of people wouldn't even realize, but cable has died. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's close. It's on life support. Cable carries our programs.
I show him my age because you see we can get into it because just last night my cable wasn't working. I was highly upset. But
you guys watch cable?
Yes.
Oh wow.
So you're a streamer.
I'm a streamer, but I hardly watch TV. So
I do it too. I stream the majority, but there are some shows that come on that, again, we can speak a little bit about this because I want to know how you get over some of those firewalls and blockages.
She was a regulator who was responsible for fair practice to tell her how to get over the firewalls.
Fair practice. I want to know how we, as persons within this region, can legally access what's out there.
That's a big problem per se, because then you're gone into a realm that's outside of our physical borders as well, because Netflix and everything would have their parameters set, because that's how they do their programming and everything.
It all comes down to legal too.
Yeah.
It comes down to legal. A lot of the content creators in the US, they don't want that content available in certain places, right? Because you have different boundaries. I know, like Jamaica, their push is about culture, their own local culture.
Yes.
So they kind of limit what can come in and so forth. They have a certain percentage that has to be local content shown. So the US providers, they're bound by the US laws. They're not bound by our laws. They're not bound by the laws of Angola. Right. So in order for them to satisfy, to be satisfied at ease with what's coming out, they kind of limit what comes out of the US. That's what it is.
I'm actually glad that you went there, because it's to provide some clarity for me. I think on Digicel, because I've had both carriers, on Digicel, sometimes my phone registers as if though it's in Jamaica. Is that because Digicel's head office is there? What is the connection, and how does the PUC regulate that to ensure that rather than registering in, is that a rule for the PUC? That rather than registering in Jamaica, it's registering here in Angola?
As long as I don't ever get $1 billion Jamaican dollars, and then you see that $75,000, which is like a couple dollars. As long as I don't see the iPhone, I don't care what my phone say. It can say Czech Republic for like.
No, because the reason I asked that is, and then I think for Flo, I've seen Antigua. So I just wondered.
Well, it all comes down to economies of scale, right?
Okay.
In the US, you have millions of customers, right? In Angola, it's 15,000 of us, 16,000 in general.
Well, the census hasn't come to California.
That's correct. When you break that down, you pull out the children, and you pull out the seniors, and you're left with about maybe 5,000, 6,000 paying customers, because you might have a phone for your child, but they're not paying it. Right. So in terms of paying, it's for it. And then you have to look now the two carriers. So let's say if it's split evenly, 50%, that's about 3,000 persons. Now, to do one cellular tower could cost somewhere up to $1 million, right? Some of these carriers have like maybe 20 to 25 cell towers here in Angola, because Angola's flat. So you have a lot of dead zones, so you have to have a lot of smaller cells. So you look at 3,000 people paying for $20-something million of infrastructure. And when I say 25 million, that's a small estimate. It's likely more than that. Right? You look at that, and then you have to look at, then you have hurricanes.
They don't own the land, by the way.
They don't own the land, so they have to pay the lease, they have to pay electricity and all that. So it gets very, very, very expensive. So what these companies have done is they have a regional body, Flo, regional, Digicel regional. They have the head office, which you said rightfully, Digicel in Jamaica. Flo has office in Barbados, in Antigua as well. And what they do is they will just share the infrastructure amongst the islands, so they share the costs, right?
Okay.
But what they do is whatever happens here stays here. Because the network is segmented, so whatever happens here stays here. So you would see it registering as Jamaica, but you're actually in Angola. It's just that Jamaica is where the main equipment is.
All right.
But Angola is segmented off, so it's not the same. The same thing would be if you go on your computer and you look up your IP, it will tell you something. You go on a shopping site, they tell you, hey, we can ship to Antigua,
Right.
but we're in Angola. That's because our internet just routes that way and comes
I
here.
got you.
Right.
Totally understand.
Yeah. So it's economies of scale. If we had the numbers, then they could say, okay, let's put this equipment here in Angola, but we just don't have it.
Okay. Right. That's fair enough. And I kind of just wanted to get a better understanding of, because you are right. I think that's where I've seen the Antigua when I try to shop online.
Yeah.
But when you try to put in your phone number on certain sites, you have the flag there and you see it.
Yeah.
I get that. Like I said, and it would never happen because, like you said, the network is segmented, so there's no way you're being billed from and all type of thing. But that would be a scare. You could imagine how social media would go crazy if somebody get a bill converted in Jamaican dollars or something like that. That'd be crazy. But there's not just the infrastructure in place, but there's the protocols and everything that would look at this.
Right.
How far does the PUC go into making sure, like, those little things? Because for me, when I think about the PUC, I almost see the PUC as a regulator, yes, but almost in an added function as well.
So we, in order to ensure the consumers get the best, we have to, we also do, we don't audit per se, but we get the financials. We get to look at that so that we can help to make sure that everything is fair, everything is balanced, and we also have to try to ensure that we don't get back into that monopoly situation. So we monitor the financials and so forth, and this everything that we do, we have a report that comes up annually. So you can go to our website pucangola.com. We have our yearly reports. The 2021 report, we were a little behind because of the COVID, which set everything back. But the 2021 report is about to be, the 2020 report is about to be out, and right behind that will be 2021. So you can check the report, so you can learn about what the percentages are, what the splits are, how the billing goes in terms of rates and so forth, so you can do your comparisons and you can shop around.
Oh, she's definitely read that. Gleniva will definitely read that. She's like, ooh, all this, oh dear? Yeah. This is the sequel for her Exco minutes.
No, I think I always say this. Information is key, and being able to get information from reliable sources is something that is so important to me, and I think it should be important to everyone. So I always encourage our listeners and our viewing audience to seek out information from reliable sources. So there you have it in terms of as it relates to the operations of the PUC. It's on your website. You can share what your website is with us.
Yes, it's pucangola.com.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, so let me ask a question. Well, this might get us in a little bit of trouble.
Let me see if I can keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, keep you out of trouble. Because it's not a utility, but it's heavily consumed by Anguillians customers. In the Virgin Islands, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a bureau that deals with, like, they go around and they check to make sure the pumps at the gas stations are calibrated correctly and all these type of things. While it's not do you see a need, that's what I'm asking, for the extension of the PUC in certain fields around here in Anguilla?
I mean, that's a tough question. Yeah.
Let me help you out there. Simply because, again, you read, you know. You speak, you know. I think at one point, and anybody listening can correct me, at one point, customs had that function. And there was a area, I know, if you were selling provisions, you would have to go to agriculture department to make sure that your scales were calibrated. And
that's the stuff that
I think customs used to make sure that the pumps, the gas pumps were calibrated, and if it's not customs, there was some department that did that.
But you see, there are a lot of different regulators. Different countries that we go through, we learn of a lot of regulators. The US have tons of it. They regulate everything. It may not be something that PUC should get into, because then you start to spread us too thin.
Right.
So I believe that we should stick with our focus on public utilities, but there should be some sort of regulation, some other body that deals with that. Yeah, because it's important. Yeah,
And
it
then
is.
even going back to
It
what you
is.
just said, you literally have 3 members of
Three
staff
members
and
of
a
staff.
board. So
That's correct.
I could see you being stretched there, because my concern, and I've raised this even with my PS in the Ministry of Finances, just my audit background, I see how imagine if you, and I'm not saying, disclaimer again, I'm not saying that anybody is doing this, but you have a pump, there's a IT component to the pump. But there is a mechanical component to this pump. And if somebody's crafting of what's displayed might not be what's coming out. And that's why you have this bureau that checks these things, because somebody could say you're getting gas at $17.01 per gallon.
Right.
But the gallon might be 0.7 of a gallon.
Right.
And what type of gallon?
And then what type of gallon?
Right. Imperial. Or
And
US.
yeah, so there's a lot of things that I think the most important, one of the most important functions from government side where consumer protection is concerned, and we always spin this.
I'm glad that your wheels are turning and you're getting right back to exactly where that conversation lies. And I can't wait
to
for
get her.
for us to have that conversation again with the PS when she comes back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to really get into that, because you are right. That is a function of consumer protection, and as Mr. Harrigan said, not necessarily for public utilities, but overall consumer protection.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, the PUC deals with consumer protection as it relates directly to public utilities.
Yeah.
So if someone has a complaint about one of the utility companies, one of the telecommunication companies, because otherwise I can get in trouble. What is the channel for being able to make said complaint? Are you saying they should go to the telecommunications company and ask them to rectify first, and then come to you? What is the channel or the usual process?
I'm glad that you asked that. You should take it up with your provider first. Right? You should. If there's no progress, then you can bring it to us, and we can then investigate on your behalf, because again we are looking out for the consumers.
Yeah.
Right,
If I can put something right here.
Go ahead.
If they take $5 off your bill, do not go down to the PUC.
No. no.
This needs to be major.
Right.
Concerns about service, astronomical billing,
Right.
this type of thing, because they got them $5 complaints, now you want nobody knocking on your door.
Right. No.
Do not
No.
go down to the PUC for $5.
That's why I'm saying that you first need to take it up with your provider.
Right.
You need to take it up with them, and you need to show us proof that you did do that. Right. There must be real concern
Right.
and inaction for it to get to our level, right? Because we kind of look at it at a macro scale, right? Not a micro scale. So if it's one individual having a big issue, the provider refuses to address it, then you bring it to us, because if they're doing it to you, then possibly they're doing it to more than one person, right? But like Ivan said, rightly, it's not every little thing that you can come to us with,
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not micromanaging the utilities, right? We're looking at it from a broader scale.
Right.
I think if I kind of recall, and I first go back to my knowledge of the PUC's existence in Anguilla, it was a number of years ago. You know when WhatsApp first brought in calls?
Yeah, I remember that.
So it's a voice over IP calls. That's what it's called. Again, I am not the technical.
No, you're right. So far,
and I remember, and I'll tell you what I remember, because it showed up on my Facebook status sometime back, and as a memory. And I remember writing, is there a I'm forgetting the name that it's called in the BVI, but the equivalent of the PUC in the BVI, and I noted that at the time, they made a press release in reference to telecommunication companies not blocking those WhatsApp and voice over IP calls. And I remember asking, do we have the equivalent here in Anguilla? Because, you know, it was new, it was coming on board, and you're being told, no, you can't make these calls over WhatsApp. And now everybody knows I pick up my phone and I call you over WhatsApp. Is that the type of instance in those types of situations where the PUC normally gets involved?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So the government would legislate what they want to see happen in terms of telecommunications, energy, and water. So they legislate that. Any carrier that has a license to operate here has to abide by those regulations, right? By that legislation. So if the government position is that service should be available, then the carrier would have to then abide by that. And that's where we would come in to ensure that they are abiding by the government's legislation. Right? So that's also one of our big goals, ensuring that they comply. Right?
Well, with the rate that technology is developing and just moving, is it possible for government to legislate exactly where it wants it to go, and what happens in the absence of such legislation?
Well, they can't legislate everything, right?
Right.
They can't
So
legislate
a new product comes on board. I don't know, something better than voice over IP,
right.
whatever that may look like. That may not have been legislated for.
Right.
What's the PUC's role?
So what they would do when they write legislation, they try to write it to catch as broad as possible, right? So by not singling out too much, then it leaves open for interpretation. Right. You spoke about the voice over IP cards and so forth. I remember that was a big thing for Joe, and some carriers were blocking the voice over IP because it was gonna be a big hit to them. Right. They make a lot of money from voice calls. Right. Data not so much. But back then we didn't have the networks that could carry the data as well. So they were also looking at protecting, you know, ensuring that the voice is to a quality. Right, by sacrificing, by limiting the data. But now networks have changed, and this is a global change. So you find is what the carriers they seem to react to the global market. So what the global market is doing, they're going to react as well, right? So the whole WhatsApp vibe, it was Skype and Viber and all of these apps, right? It was all of these apps.
Yes.
You see that they started to see some value in having those apps. So globally, they allowed them to happen, and then eventually it came down to Anguilla as well, right? But the PUC now, every island in the region has some sort of regulator, telecommunication regulator. They have to have it in order to have this market, this liberalized market. You must have a regulator, right? The regulator is the one we keeping the peace between everybody, right? We also have a regional body, right? So we all get together occasionally. And we discuss what we want to see in the region, what we want to see happen, and then we also have conversations with the carriers as well. So we don't leave them out. So we consult with them and we see where they're at, what they're thinking, and then we try to find the best way to steer, in that direction.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back to something Ivan touched on earlier. Slightly aware of it simply because I see like some tourists speaking about it, the purchasing of these, the global SIM cards.
Right.
If you start to see a major influx of these, because they're not technically selling in Anguilla. If I use my what do you call that? My shipping forward address, and I purchase one of those SIMs and I send to that address, and then it's forwarded to Anguilla, and I'm using and utilizing it here. If you see an influx of that, because that has the potential to negatively impact our local carriers, is that something that the PUC can step in and sort of regulate?
Yes. When we get this data from the carriers, it also includes roaming.
Yeah.
Right. So we get those figures. The carriers know, because even though you have a global SIM, you have to roam.
Yeah.
Right.
So whether you roam on Flow or you roam on Digicel, they're gonna know.
Yeah.
So they're
Okay.
keeping tabs. Somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happens is you have Google, whoever you're getting the SIM card from, they have some kind of agreement with one of the carriers that says, hey, you know, we can do this for this price, and so forth. And in return, when we go
Yeah.
to the US, they're gonna roam. So
Yeah.
there's some bilateral agreements that go on. But if it comes to a point where the carriers see it as a problem, then we would have to get, we'd have to look into it. We also do have good relationships with the FCC in the US and with Ofcom in the UK. We have good relationships with St. Martin regulators, both
Yeah.
French and Dutch.
So how come
Very
we don't
good
pay so much
relationships.
to Roman St. Martin?
Well, they're working on that. They're working on that.
See,
Listen.
because I do
Yeah.
my homework and I do like to read. So I was coming
Yeah.
with that because I did see something on the PUC's website that there was some discussions in terms of Anguilla and St. Martin and the network sharing or
Yes,
something.
so
something along
we-
those lines.
We have an agreement with it's the government of Angola, French and Dutch. We have an agreement for how we operate. That's because the islands are so close.
Right.
So we have a lot of interference. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
covers.
I roam in Blowing Point. I roam in
Yeah.
Langpad.
I
It's
roam,
crazy.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
strange because I roam in the forest,
Uh-huh.
but I don't have roaming activated. I don't have that kind of money. So I don't have roaming activated. So I lose service when I go to the forest.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But if I go to St. Martin, and depending on
You
where
get
I am
you get
in
service.
Simpson Bay,
Yeah.
I get better service than certain parts of my house.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's weird, but do you get charged for the roaming? That's the question.
No, because I don't have roaming activated. So
Okay.
when I'm in St. Martin, it's full regular service. If my phone goes to roaming, it shuts off because I don't have roaming. I don't have that kind of money.
No.
Yeah, but via our agreement,
Uh-huh.
it specifies what frequencies we should be on,
Yeah.
and it also says what powers we should have, right? How strong our service should
Yeah.
be. No, we can't stop service from hitting St. Martin because to cover Blowing Point, there's a tower right in Blowing Point,
Yeah.
and that tower, because it's flat, it has a range.
Open water.
Right, open
Yeah.
water is straight to St. Martin,
And
and
then
the same
Muscle
thing.
Mountain over there.
and it is
St.
also-
Martin is on
yes.
top of the mountain, so
Yeah.
they just beam. So what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to turn our antennas to face in country, right? So we don't have an antenna. You cannot intentionally point the antenna to St. Martin. You can't. Our carriers,
Uh-huh.
in St. Martin, carriers cannot intentionally point to us. But again, we can avoid that
Yeah.
because if our antenna is up on the mountain in St. Martin, pointing down to Marigot, it comes straight across the Anguilla, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have a lot of discussions on that. We have a whole agreement on how that's supposed to work, and you should not be billed for roaming. If you can prove that you're actually in Angola but you roamed, you shouldn't be billed for that roaming.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be.
Okay.
But the thing is that once you roam, the system
Picks
is
it
gonna
up.
pick it up as a roaming, and it's gonna automatically
Yeah.
do that. And I know that the both carriers incur some serious losses for roaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know once you roaming, they're not supposed to charge you for roaming in country.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
sometimes you have to explain it. Sometimes there's a spike, and
Yeah.
I should probably not speak to this because I've had that. I've been going Blowing Point, taking all these pictures and thing. And when I went to St. Martin one day, come back, and I stopped there. That's another thing. You got to be careful. I would advise anybody when you come back, if you go to St. Martin,
Yeah.
and your phone was, don't do the airplane mode thing. Like shut that down
Yeah,
and
bring it back
start
up.
that back
Yeah.
up.
Really? Because
once
again,
it-
I don't get roaming.
Why you
charges 'cause I
connect
don't
to
have-
Once
us?
it locks on,
Yeah.
it is gonna wanna stay.
You're gonna
It's
wanna
gonna
Ah.
stay. Yeah.
Is
You
it-
see,
yeah.
because I don't roam, that's not a big issue.
Yeah.
No, once it lock on, you're gonna say, so you be happy down there, go lucky talking to people in customs and everything, thinking that you're on your home network now, and you could be literally still on
yeah.
St. Martin. Depends on where you turn it on. Coming up the pier, if that signal just catch you, that's it, you're locked in, and you don't pay
Yeah.
attention until you go up the road, you try to make a call, and it's switching over now because you're no longer connected there. It's very funny.
It is, yeah.
But going back to what you were saying too, and I'm happy that you mentioned the agreements that happen between governments and these utilities, because I know for a fact, like with the global SIM, you have to have some time like on the US network.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
So you can't just buy it and sit down
Forever.
and forever.
Okay.
Nah, you
Yeah.
lock up, shut down, and then you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are protection mechanisms built in to make sure like the carriers don't suffer and you don't take advantage of the system.
Yeah.
It's from what I'm gathering, it's easier to control, for the lack of a better word, what's happening on the communication side where internet and phone is concerned. In our case, we don't have competing interests based on acts and legislations for water and electricity. But if there was a specific supplier that would come in, if the legislation were to change, those would fall under the PUC as well.
Yes, that's correct.
So let me ask you a question. A lot of people right now go into solar in the homes and those type of things. If sorry, that's wow, why did that choke me? If it gets to the point where Anglec moves towards renewable energy and we're doing this buyback, this why you call it grid tie with the homes and stuff, does that expand your portfolio for regulation now? Because they're selling back to the power company. I don't know. I just thinking out loud.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
No, because we will be responsible for the actual utility, which would be Anglec.
Okay.
So if Anglec wants to enter into agreement, and I hope I'm not speaking of a ton, it's not legislated yet. But the way it's done in other parts of the world is if the power company wants to allow you to sell back your excess generated from your solar panels, then that's an agreement between you
and the
power company.
Because you don't get involved in the people that have the leases with the utilities, the phone companies that have their towers on their buildings and on their land and stuff. Man, I think I miss a thing there now. We on the hill in George. I should have been able, but the airport there in the way because no, that's I'm not even being funny. That's like set money. That tower ain't going up here when I'm done put that down.
We can talk about this all. Because there are a few people that may be listening to this and go,
but to finish answer your question, we would be responsible for the actual utility itself, like the large scale provider. So if because again I would say it's in our legislation, but it hasn't been activated, so it is there. If we were to get another electricity provider, large scale, then we will be responsible for regulating that when activated, right? So it will no longer be just Anglec, it will be Anglec and somebody else or somebody else, right? And then the regulation would have to come in the same way we did when we did with Flow and HSL if it gets activated, right? But we would be responsible. We would have a say in the pricing, though. The pricing. So we wouldn't be involved in the contract between the individual home and Anglec, but we would have some say because we want to make sure that it's fair pricing. Right. So we didn't have to look at what you charge to generate, what Anglec would charge to generate, and then make sure that if there's a buyback scenario, that is something that makes sense for the consumers.
Yeah. So somebody from Anglec can go pay their cousin, niece, sister, and go way down the line, one rate, and then pay the friend that they went to school another rate and that type of thing, just because of relations. It have to be what's produced, that type of thing. So there's a second pair of eyes to go for that.
Right, but then again, I have to stress that is if that power becomes activated.
So let's switch back to the ones that do exist. So back into telecommunications.
Right.
The PUC regulates the rates for cell phones, cable, internet.
We regulate all the rates. No, we don't set the price. We let the market set the price. Right. So you get that little war, that pricing war between both companies. One gonna drop today, the next one gonna say, well, maybe I need to drop two to keep my share, and we allow that to play out.
They don't want to drop at Christmas. Every Christmas is a gift. Every Christmas
I look forward to Christmas.
So we allow that to play out. But where we would have gotten involved in the past was, again, we all started with the cable and wireless, and then when the others came in, we had to ensure that they had an equal opportunity to use to connect to cable and wireless. So again, we had to ensure that Digicel customers could call cable and wireless customer,
Yes.
a cable and wireless could call, and we had to ensure that. We had to ensure that because cable and wireless would have had the main infrastructure,
Yeah.
they had the landlines and everything. We had to ensure that they do that at an affordable rate, right?
Because cable is going to charge them anything to get on the network.
Right. So what you call that interconnection. So we would have been involved in setting that interconnection. And every couple of years, we would then speak to both carriers, and through public consultation, we would ask, are there any issues with the rate as it stands now? And if everybody's happy, then we're good to go.
Yeah.
Right? We haven't had any concerns about those rates in, I think, the past 10 years. So
I know you
everybody's
want to
happy.
jump on this.
No way, I agree with this.
I got to sit back for this one.
So, I'll tell you why. Because I got a message this one. I don't know whether people just know who this. Ivan, you to be telling people who we got coming on the show.
This is your show, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gleneva Hodges' show. I told you I'm part of the furniture. I just do what she tells me. So go right
because
ahead.
this one, and I got a message from someone.
Uh-huh.
And it is something that I have noticed for about 2 weeks. I think you know where I'm going with this. And I don't know if you've gotten complaints. I am on Digicel.
Can't call flow.
And every single time I try to call a Flow cell phone, in particular, more cell phone than landline, I have to try at least 2 or 3 times before I'm connected. It's just, you can't and it's dropped. You can't and it's dropped. And it's an ongoing problem. Is that something that the PUC regulates?
But I think they would have been going through some upgrades.
Yeah, that is a valid concern. The thing is that interconnection would be something between both carriers, and normally you may get a little trip because the bulk of the equipment is not in Anguilla.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you may have something that may happen in Antigua or somewhere
Yeah.
that might trip, that might mess up here, and it's only after a few people get that issue then
Then
they
you know
realize,
it's
hey, we
something.
have that problem,
And
so
then
they have to
you're
rush to fix
fixing
it.
it. Yeah.
Right, and that troubleshooting is not only here; they have to now hit everywhere else. They know where they are through the region. So it is, but it's not a complaint that we get. That we have been getting often, because normally it gets fixed.
Yeah.
Right? It
So
gets fixed.
is that one that you currently have? Because otherwise I'm leaving from here and I'm going to write a letter. No, because it has, and again, I got a message from someone saying, who is going to address this issue? Because it is affecting a number of persons.
Right.
And it's been going on for some time.
So that's definitely a complaint you have to bring up with your carrier. You have to bring it up with them.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I bring it up with them and
Yeah,
then...
you're gonna have to do
carrier
that.
first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to jump ahead, but since we stayed on this what you call it? Interconnect, right? So you have, like Gleneva said, you have sometimes Digicel can't reach Flow, Flow can't reach Digicel, and these other instances of people that the Anguillans say, well, Flow in Digicel Vex again. But the service is still required. I mean, so recently, there was talk in the news about Anglic being a national security issue, right? Recently, when they had done by the governor. So folks were like, how Anglic got a national security issue? Here's how Anglic got a national security issue. There are people that are on ventilators. There are people that have medication at home. When you're talking about loss of power, and probably an extended loss of power, that's national security. I think everybody understands how national security is affected with communications when a hurricane happens.
Right.
We can't wait for all it is, if it cuts you off, then it's a matter of national security,
Yes,
like at the
it
most
is.
basic level. So, in instances where you have hurricanes and stuff, cause we saw it. Why was Lenny Louis? No, that's too far back. Recently,
The
we got a table
the
here.
one that I still got
how could you
PTSD
get
about.
that's still here.
No, so we're not trying to forget that.
I try to forget I try to forget COVID.
We're not trying to forget them things here. but there was like a major shift in the carrier load because people couldn't get on. How does the PUC step in after that? It's up to the carriers now to go back after their clients and say, no, you need to fix that part to bring them back on board. Because I know a couple people, they jump ship and never left. But you want the healthy competition.
Right.
If there was a run on any particular company during that time, and a company decide, well, we ain't getting them back and we got to pull out. Like, what does that do for the PUC? How do we say, okay, they got too much now, they're almost operating like a monopoly?
Right. So what happened is that we'd have to ensure that that the second carrier, the one that's being affected, that they would be able to compete.
Okay.
Right? We have to ensure that they'll be able to compete.
Okay.
So again, we'd have to bring both carriers to the table and see how we can,
you do a lot of
work at it.
mediation if needed.
Mediation work,
Okay.
right? But again, we can't micromanage, right? So this is why we get this certain data and information from the carriers every year at the end of the year, so that we can have an insight into how they're performing, so that it doesn't come to a point. I know there was one country recently where they had two carriers and the second carrier was going belly up, and they refused to say anything, and then one day they just got up and just turned off the network, shut it off, right?
That's why that's where I was going with that.
Right.
Like who managed that information to say that don't happen? Because
right. So what we would have to do is, we'd have to pay attention to how it's going, how the market is going, pay attention to that, and then we try to make sure that we keep the fee level, right? And if we're seeing that the carrier is in a lot of trouble, we see how we can assist them. Right?
Okay.
And then we probably may have to start looking at replacements.
Okay.
Maybe.
Totally understand. So
Yeah.
there's constant, although you said you report yearly,
Yeah.
there's constant monitoring of the relationship and the delivery of service
Yeah.
from the PUC.
Yeah.
All right, that is amazing.
I'm going to look at those reports. And I'll
I
tell
know
you-
you're going to read every
You're not gonna get the nitty-gritty
No,
of the
not in
carriers.
it. Not in it.
Not gonna get
But
it.
I would
But
be
you're gonna get-
interested. What I would be interested in seeing is
Yeah.
whether or not carriers report peak times. And Ivan kind of alluded to it in terms of
Yeah.
after Irma. We know that
carrier.
a whole lot of people were lined up outside a particular carrier for a very long time, waiting to get SIMs. I can tell you every single time that there is weather coming or threatening,
Yeah, they got
the,
there.
the lines are long.
No, but yeah, no. The reality is that you can try your best to prepare, right? But you never know until you get a failure, right? So both carriers have built back stronger. So they should be in a better position if something happens.
Let's put it this way: I prefer to have two than to be caught with one.
Definitely.
Definitely. I got something for that now.
Yeah.
Because it's something that I heard a conversation started on maybe a couple years ago, and I know Glenn even gonna jump on this one now. Why do we still have carriers selling locked phones to their network?
That's our business model. It's a business model. But what we're seeing globally, the trend is moving away from that. But that's a business model because they have the carriers that pay this exclusivity with some of these these, like I know particular carrier may have a contract with a particular brand, and then they're going to sell it. But the thing is, you may have people from the other carrier who may come in, get a phone for cheap, and then run back to their carrier, and then we don't get anything. That particular doesn't get anything from it because what they do, they try to make it up in usage.
Yeah,
they try to make it up in usage. So they give you a discount on the phone. Like you may see Digicel would have their phone now. They have the Digicel branded phone, which is going for a very, very cheap price. It's a very, very cheap price.
Great for kids.
Right, and they do that because the hope is that
No, they don't want that. Let's be honest about that.
Yes,
I can't tell you
Our
are
children.
Our children don't want
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm
They
sorry.
want something advanced.
I'm sorry.
They want memory and processor.
And you see the camera and this, that they can't use that.
That
How
is-
gonna take a selfie?
Yeah.
That is what she has. Because until she's working, that is what you
Listen,
have.
listen.
But that's what they do. So they sell the phone at cheap, and the hope is that you would use the networking, they recuperate some of the cash. It's the same
Okay.
thing. The same thing when you buy a printer, right? You buy a printer. Right? The printer is cheap. The printer is less than $100. But then when the ink runs out, you have to spend the same $100 to buy the ink. And you're saying, but I got a printer for $50. It had ink in it. But now to buy the replacement ink is $100, which is more than the printer. Yeah, that's what they do. So they make it up in ink.
I will tell you, my current phone is old. I need to upgrade. But
Hint. Okay.
to somebody. Christmas around the corner.
Yep.
But no, I bought my phone from a local carrier. And in my head, my phone was locked. I couldn't use my phone anywhere else. I traveled to the US and my dad purchased a SIM, but I wouldn't walk in his phone for whatever reason. And I said, well, okay, let me just try in my phone, even though my phone is locked. Let me try my phone. And surprisingly, it was not locked. So I've been able to, and I did not do anything to break my phone. I just thought it was.
You went east and we get it unlocked.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
I have no idea.
Very clever. Yeah. No.
No. But we spoke about global trends.
Yeah.
And I know internationally when you look, you're seeing the emergence of 5G. And a lot of carriers switching to 5G. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a recent press release put out by one of our local carriers in terms of how roaming is being done
Right, yeah.
in the US with them, and that there's
Both
some issues.
have now.
Oh, both
have,
okay.
Yeah.
With some issues there because the carriers in the US have switched to 5G.
Right.
And we are not yet there. Is that something that we are walking towards?
Okay, so with every new technology comes massive expenses. Right? It's massive expenses.
Massive
Right.
expenses.
Our carriers just spent millions of dollars to get us to 4G.
Yeah, and
Right.
we were on
We just got
LTE,
there.
we were on Edge, we were on all kind of things coming up.
What
Yeah,
was
and
each?
we are usually about 4 to 5 years behind.
Uh-huh.
With these advances, right? Why? Because it's more of a trial, so they're trying it, they're perfecting it,
Okay.
right? And as the years go by, it gets a little cheaper, so it becomes affordable for us. Now,
You just took away some argument though, because people were saying that the COVID was the 5G and it was Anguilla, it was no free. I heard that nonsense.
no, we have. There's no, there's no 5G.
I wanted
in
to tell them
Angola.
clear there's no 5G,
nobody-
but I got that argument on
No.
the street.
No,
They
no,
say
no.
is they just upgraded network,
No.
they got 5G here
No.
and they give people the COVID.
No,
I heard that.
none of our carriers are testing 5G.
Tell them again, please.
There's no 5G in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Well, let me not say the Caribbean. There's 5G in the US territories because of the US carriers. So T-Mobile, AT&T,
Yeah.
whatever they do on the mainland, they're gonna do.
Do it,
So
yeah, so-
there's 5G.
Yeah.
I think there is some 5G in the Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
But there is 5G in Puerto Rico. But there's no other country right now is doing 5G. I believe I heard that Antigua was testing 5G. Yeah, on a very small scale. I don't know how advanced that is, but there's no other Caribbean country doing 5G.
Yeah.
We actually had a meeting in September with the regional bodies, regional regulator bodies. We had a meeting, and we were discussing where we want to see the Caribbean in the next couple of years. That the 5G topic did come up. We actually now learning about 5G,
Right.
educating ourselves as regulators, because we have to prepare the whole scope for it. Because one of the other rules that we have in the PUC is we regulate, we're responsible for monitoring and maintaining the government, the wireless spectrum, right?
Yes.
The wireless spectrum.
Glad you touch on that.
So the government, the carriers would have to buy some wireless spectrum to be able to use, right?
Right.
So they get a block of 5 megahertz of a spectrum. We have not issued any spectrum to any carrier for 5G.
Right.
right? The most that we have here in Angola is 4G LTE.
I want you to break that down because I don't want people to think that you just come as a carrier, you plug in two things. And
No, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So, they would have to apply to the PUC for Spectrum, right? When they apply for Spectrum, so they say, okay, I need 5 megahertz to be able to do this. So they have to declare what is going to be used for.
Right.
It has to be declared, and then we have to consult with, because the Spectrum belongs to the Crown, right? It belongs to the Crown. So we then would have to consult with the government, with Executive Council. So we would say, hey, this is a request for Spectrum. It has to be approved in Executive Council, and then it would be charged, and they would pay for use of that Spectrum.
Okay,
Right.
I got two things now. You see, the name and answer now.
Right.
Right. So you're talking about the spectrum, right?
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned specifically X amount of megahertz.
Right.
Do radio stations have to apply for the same thing?
Radio stations do, yes. So, example, you have 92.9 megahertz. They have to apply for it. But that part is handled by the telecommunications officer at the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Okay.
So that's what I was doing before I came over here. I was in charge of radio stations and so forth.
Okay.
So they have to apply for a frequency. We have a limited set of frequencies because, again, we share the spectrum with St. Martin.
Right.
So if there's 30 blocks of spectrum for radio stations, we split it 10, 10, 10.
Yeah.
So Angola has 10, French St. Martin has 10, Dutch St. Martin has 10.
And just so people understand, because listen, people love what's going on here. I got a comment last night from a young lady. She said her husband absolutely loves the show. He said he's learning so much.
Yeah.
And this is what this is about, educating the populace. So folks should understand that there's a limit to how much you can have of radio stations and everything,
Yes.
because it's not just willy-nilly.
Right.
Like, these things are
It is.
regulated based on capacity as
Correct.
well.
Yeah, and we've had this agreement for more than a decade. It's agreed. So the stations that we have now are more or less locked.
Right.
So, and that's to protect each other, right? So nobody can get up tomorrow in St. Martin and start the broadcast on 95.5, which is Radio Angola. They
No,
can't.
do that. No, they shouldn't do
If
that.
someone does that and we pick up the interference here, we can call St. Martin, the bureau over there, and say, hey, we get an interference from St. Martin.
What people
And-
would call the Spanish stations cutting it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they will address it almost immediately.
Yeah.
We have a 30-day span to address interference. And the same goes if we turn on a station here and it's interfering with St. Martin, they would call us, and then we would have to get in touch with that station and say, hey, listen, something off.
Yeah.
You're interfering with St. Martin, you need to address that immediately. You have 30 days to rectify.
Good, awesome.
Right.
Well, let me stay right here for a minute, because on that spectrum too, it's like a certain range.
Right.
Like, so you can't get 95.6.
No, you can't. No. We spread 0.4.
Okay.
It's a 0.4 spread. So you'd have 95.5, and next station will be 95.7. And what we do is we encourage each broadcaster to put on the proper filters to ensure that they stick
Within
as
there,
close as possible to their middle frequency. So 95.5 FM, they have a filter on that says they can't go beyond 95.4, they can't go any lower than that, and they can't go any higher than 95.6. Your strength is supposed to be on 95.5, and after that, it's supposed to die down in a bell curve. It's
Right.
supposed to die. Right? So that way, 95.5, 95.9, they should be dead before they get to 95.7 in the middle.
Right.
Should be dead. There should be nothing.
Nothing in between.
Nothing in between.
I love
Right.
stuff like that, because that adds a bit of adds the respect that's necessary in a market that can go heavily unregulated in some areas if you're not like really paying attention.
Yeah.
And I'm appreciative of that, so persons would understand now, like, this is not just willy-nilly. 'Cause I know you got a couple of people trying to start a radio station.
Yeah, but the thing is, what people need to know is we have equipment, right? We have equipment that we scan the whole spectrum. We scan, and anything we pick up, that's supposed to be there. Now, there's a lot of powers in legislation that people may not know. it's illegal to broadcast anything without a license.
Be
Illegal.
careful.
Very illegal. Now, the telecommunications officer has the power of entry into any premises that he feels is pirating. That is legislated. He can go in, he can seize
Like
all
just turn up the
equipment.
table.
No, respectfully, and he can seize all equipment and take ownership. The Crown will take ownership of any equipment that is operating that should not be operated. That is there.
You hear that?
Yeah.
We also monitor for our service providers as well. So we know that if one provider is supposed to be 905 to 910, we go out and we make sure that they're staying between 905 and 910. We scan all the time. We do that on a monthly basis. So we're out there.
So if somebody ain't paying licenses and checking in with the role that you had before,
the
telecommunications officer.
Yeah.
that
Just
person-
say check in with the ministry.
check in with the ministry of
Yeah.
Well, we hope
infrastructure.
to have persons from that.
Yeah,
ministry
they
come
coming
on
up
soon
soon.
as well.
Yeah.
They can literally go in and shake that up now.
They can, yes. Yeah.
Because there's a prevailing thought that Angola's a cowboy country and people doing what they want. To some extent, they are.
No,
but
you see, the thing is that because Angola is small, everybody knows everybody. So we try not to be heavy-handed,
okay.
right? So you're not gonna see him busting into doors and kicking down doors and everything. He more or less gonna give you a call and say, hey,
Yo,
listen,
fix this.
sort out yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But the legislation does permit. It does permit. I don't know of any instance where it's actually being used, but it is. Yeah.
So
I mean, we also have that power, but we have it on utility scale. So we can enter any premises once we feel that something is wrong. We can do that.
that's awesome.
In a utility. Yeah.
Go ahead, Gleniva. Because I
No.
want to get into something else, and then I don't think.
No, because
Okay.
I was just going to give you our time warning.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So go ahead.
Okay. All right. All time on it. You've given us so much to digest now.
Yeah.
I don't even think we haven't touched a number of things. We ain't scratched the surface.
These guys just always.
But there's a lot that you have going on as the executive director of the PUC. I'll be honest in telling you, and I had this conversation. I wonder, when I was leaving the office, I was saying, yeah, we're going to tape. We have Vani on. I was like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, there's he done PUC. Oh, yeah, of course. I can get all the details now. But I was saying that knowing your background, knowing your temperament, knowing your passion, I think the role called you. I often like, in all honesty, I often watched you throughout your career and asked what would be next.
Yeah.
And I think the role fits.
Thank you.
Saying all that to say now,
you.
like, what's your vision for the PUC over the next 10 years?
Okay, so we're working on our plan, right? So there are things I want to see. Now, a lot of questions came out, valid questions, but those are questions we're asking ourselves, right? So things like the complaints and so forth. We want to be able to put something online so persons can start to make complaints, right? Complaints to the PUC so that we can address them. I know that a lot of people may have complaints. They've gone to the carriers, probably left unsatisfied. They don't know the procedures. They don't, right? So we want to make it easier, right? We also want to make it easier for people to get information, right? To know things, right? So we want to expand on our website, get more information up there. So also at any one time, people can go on and
She wanted
she can see what's going on with our telecommunications. She can go on and see it. Right?
She got how we can read it now back.
Yeah. So we want to be a little more transparent with the information that we've gathered, right? Also, we want to look at how we steer our utilities, right? The telecommunication providers. You asked rightfully what's our plans for 5G. We also have a lot of concerns about cybersecurity, which is a big concern in the region and globally. And a lot of the regulators now are looking into cybersecurity. That's a big deal. So we want to actually look at that. We're looking at how we can, tweak legislation, right? to get things a little more where we want them to be.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's been popping out in all these shows, the need for
Legislation, yeah.
Updates and legislative changes.
Yeah.
Because like just coming off from Mrs. Brooks Gomes talking about the pension, the public service pension fund, like you would imagine the calls we got, people say, yeah, we really want, like I got the messages, like yeah, the hotel workers and somebody needs to get on
I
that.
mean, I left from that session and walked into a wasp nest of having to deal with the very same issue. So again, we kind of cut off Mr. Harricum, but
but it's valid. Legislation, and that's always been a concern with me from when I started in the service. It's always been legislation has been a problem. Because what we do here is we set legislation, but legislation is a living thing.
Yeah.
It's living, and we have to keep revising, right?
Yeah.
So we definitely want to do that. We also want to do more testing, more surveys, and so we know we had some radio stations here which a lot of people are concerned about that, so we're looking at acquiring equipment that we can start doing a lot of measurements. So we're looking at how the electromagnetic fields affect people and so forth. So we want to do a lot of that, and we want to get that information out there so people can know. You know what I mean? A lot of misconceptions are out there. So we want to get that out there. So that we just want to do more for the consumer. That's what we want to do.
So,
right.
On that note, we always end with an open invitation to come back, because I think just at the very end you started to touch some things where that we kind of want to get into. So definitely an open invitation. Come back, speak with us anytime. This has been, for me, very informative.
Definitely.
Again, my only interaction with even thinking about a PUC was at that point when you had those voice over IP calls being blocked, and then just doing some surface research. But for me, this has been very informative. I appreciate you coming on and just speaking with us about the role of the PUC, what you have been doing and what you hope to do going forward. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. This will not be your first and only time. You will be back. We got a lot to dive into, but I am positive our listeners today are one day wiser about what's happening and the infrastructure that's in place. Happy knowing that it's regulated and we have a lot of things to work on. So on that note, thank you very much for being here, Mr. Damian Varney Harrigan. I put it together now.
You got it.
I got it. And this has been another excellent episode of Progress Report, updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. Thank you for listening.